Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang namang sanghang namasami. Okay. So BuddhaNexus is a website I've been working on for the last 2 years with the Numata Center at the University of Hamburg. And it's a very interesting project because it basically uses a neural network approach to find parallels in the ancient Buddhist texts. So you can sort of compare that a little bit with how, for instance, Google Translator translates your texts if you want to have something in another language. I use that very much for my emails. And so it uses sort of the same kind of system to compare like large corporate, like basically everything we have of the ancient Buddhist texts together. So we're not quite there that it can actually compare different languages. We have a little bit of multilingual matches between Sanskrit and Tibetan, but not quite yet. But I will explain that a bit when we get there. So that's sort of our next step, right? First, we have like the whole Pali canon, compared all that, and all the whole Tibetan canon and things like that, and also the non-canonical texts, especially in Sanskrit and other languages. So I would say let's dive right in and now go to the website. So this is the BuddhaNexus website. And what I'm going to show you is actually not exactly this side, but our staging side. And the reason is that there are a few little things on the staging side that's basically our testing site that are not quite yet on BuddhaNexus.net, but that will come in the next probably next week. So I wanted to have the latest version, so I'm going to switch to that one. So that looks exactly the same, just has a different address at the top here. Okay. So let's see if I can make this screen big so you can see the whole screen. Okay, wonderful. Okay. So this is I don't know why there's an orange border around this, but maybe that has something to do with Firefox, I think, because I made it. I'll see if it disappears, and otherwise we'll just have to live with it. Okay, so this is the BuddhaNexus homepage, as you can see, and you have a few tabs here at the top with different subtabs. And so you can just read through that of like who we are, the people that have contributed, all the institutions that have contributed as well. As you see, several things, SuttaCentral as well, University of Hamburg, of course, and quite a lot of organizations that have contributed to the site. I'll go back to the home screen. So here in guidelines, there's a lot of information there that I will talk about during this presentation, but you can, if there's something you forget about what the settings are for the filters, for instance, you can find that back in guidelines. And other things, publications and whatever, you can have a look at yourself. The most interesting thing I'm going to talk about is this database. And there you have all these languages. There's also the multilingual. And the first 4, that's also the same ones you find back at the bottom here with these lovely colors. And then the visual charts I also briefly talk about. The tools, that's basically at the moment only a Sanskrit stammer. So you put in a Sanskrit word, sometimes they're very long, and it divides it in its separate part. Like to say, like, oh, this part is the verb, and this is like this word, and etc. So, but I won't be discussing that in detail. So let's go. I think most of you are interested in Pali, so I'll go to the Pali database. Looks like that yellow line is not disappearing, and I think it's definitely a Firefox issue. So can you please tell me if you see at the top right here, you see a filters and settings button? Yes, okay. So then you see everything anyway. So what we have here is various types of views. So you have text, table, numbers, graph, and English view. And here you can find the Pali text. So it starts with the Digha Nikaya 1 and then the Brahmajala Sutta. And you can scroll down and have all these texts. If you don't quite know which text you're looking for, you can also look at this button at the top here. And then you get the menu and you can open that up and you see the various texts that you can, like a Vinaya text if you want that. And so you can just open that up from there as well. And then here we see a full screen mode, so we can use that later on as well. I have to select the text first, otherwise that part is gone, and a settings menu. So let's first start with the text. Ooh. It looks like my computer got frozen all of a sudden. Ah, there we are, back again. Yeah. It could also be my internet being a bit slow at the moment, being in the evening. Okay, so it automatically opens up in text view. So you see a couple of more things that have appeared here. So there is this thing that says PTS section. Then you can jump to a section in that text. So if you know a number, then that's where you can go. So you can see these numbers here on the side. They are the same numbers that SuttaCentral is using, and they're the PTS numbers. So this is the section 0, this is section 1, etc., section 2. And here there's also a search button. You can search in this text. There's here on the top, there is another search button. It's a global search. So that searches through all the texts. So if you don't quite know what you're looking for, then you can get many search results. Okay. So now you see all these lovely colors here, and you're probably wondering what they are. So here it says the inquiry text is DN4, and if I hover over it, I see the name. And this little thing is when you can copy the title to the clipboard if you want to refer to it somewhere. And here you get an info button. So that basically tells you what all these colors are. It's basically the color coding means it's called a heat map. It's will tell you how many matches there are. So if it's just black text, like here you see the Digha Nikaya 4, and so that's no matches. And here this goes up to this bright orange, and there's many matches. So there's some of this other text, there's many matches there. And the matches also, and how many matches there are, depends on your settings. But go to the filters and settings menu. This first one is to choose languages Pali. That's a setting that's only there for later on when we also have matches with other languages. So for the time being, just leave that on. If you click the Pali off, you won't get any matches at all. So, and then here there's the Similarity Score, and it tells you also what it means, and the minimum match length, and number of occurrences. So what these filters are, it's like the similarity score is how similar a bit of text is to another bit of text in another text, obviously. And that basically means that this neural network approach, it doesn't look at exactly the same text, but also if it's somewhere similar and not quite the same. So that's how, here you can say how similar do you want it to be. Now, match length, that's sort of obvious. It's like if it's just one word, it's not very long, so that's the number of characters. And the number of co-occurrences, that's also a setting that has to do with, for instance, if you have the words where you see here, for instance, Evang Me Sutang, you have that in the Pali canon in about like 6,000 or so of these things. So it's not particularly that interesting. So the higher you set this or the lower you set this number of number of co-occurrences, the less matches you get, because like all the ones that occur a lot of times are filtered out then. And here you can exclude collections or exclude files. If you say, well, I really don't want to see the commentaries, you can exclude them. So I'll just do that for now. So here we have suttas early, suttas late. You can do any one of them, but I'm just gonna click all these commentaries off. All these commentaries, there's 3 sets of commentaries. I'm gonna click all of them off. And if you just want to limit to a certain collection, like, oh, I just want this one or this other. So these 2 versions, to exclude and include settings, that's sort of overlapping. So you can just play around with that. And here it says show segment numbers. So that's the segment numbers you see in the panel. You can put them to the right as well, or you can, then they appear here. I'll keep them back to the left, or you can just turn them off if you want. So, all right. So now let's, and here at the top also, go back to the beginning of this text if you're somewhere down there, and also you can open it in a new tab if you want to do some work in different ways. And here's the link to SuttaCentral. If you want to see it in original text in SuttaCentral with the translations and the parallels there, you can go there. Okay, so let's make this full screen. And you can see a little bit more. Okay, so we have this lovely text with all these colors. So let's click on one. And then a new side or new column opens up. And it says it's 28 parallel segments found with the selected segment with the current filters. So, and here it lists all of them. And as you remember, we've turned off all the commentaries. So these are all non-commentarial texts that we are seeing here. So what do we see here? It's like, well, you can see if I hover over them, the highlighting on this other side is changing. So it basically tells you where the match is with which part. So that basically also means that each one of these characters that you click on can give you a different set of these matches. So now here we have the number of the match so this is Anguttara Nikaya 530. If I hover over it, then it gives me the name as well of that sutta. Here you can copy that to the clipboard and you can display it in SuttaCentral. In this case, SuttaCentral. It's of course not always SuttaCentral. The commentarial text, for instance, go to the VRI website. The Chinese ones go to the CBeta website. So there's different websites where these things go to. It also tells you the score. So this is 100% similarity score, the length of characters of this, and the number of co-occurrences. If I click on this one, it opens up a 3rd column, and I'll just make these columns a little bit bigger. And what you see here is that it opens up that text, that same text that I just clicked on, in the new column, and it shows you how much it has in common with the first text on the left side. So everything that's green here, it has in common with this. I can click on the other green one, and it will tell you, oh, it's this part it has in common with. And if I click on that, it will scroll to that. And it will show you that match. So this way you can compare both of these settings. All right. Ooh, I don't know what happened there. It somehow jumped out of my full screen mode. So let's see if I can get back there. Okay. So I've got two full screen modes going here, one from Firefox itself and one from BuddhaNexus. So I've gone back here to get this menu on the top back, and we can look at several other modes as well. So we look at table mode. And then you basically get all the matches in a table. So instead of like being on top of each other in a heat map, you get them one by one. So if you want to really look at this in a very detailed way, and if you're not very interested in the top, then you can also go to whichever section you wanted to have. Another thing that is appeared here is this button here, and then you can download this to an Excel spreadsheet. And then you can compare it and delete bits, and you can like manipulate it in any which way you want. So you can download all these things. Another option is the numbers view. You just see all those segment numbers. And this is especially handy for instance, verses I found to tell you where in which collection there are verses. So I'll go slightly down here. So I can scroll this way. Okay, now it stops there because I don't have any more collections where this appears, but it tells you in which collection there are matches in the first place. And so this is the Digha Nikaya 4 that we were looking at, with, and whichever segment number that is, and it has matches with all these various things. So you can just browse around in that, and if you're just mostly interested in where you can find something, and if you want to go there, you say like, oh, I'm really interested in this one here, and then you click on it, and it opens it up in a new page. I think my internet is a bit slow at the moment. It being Friday night, and we are on a mobile internet, so sometimes that tends to take a long time. So here it is. And then it also highlights this part. And you'll find that wherever you are, if you click on any of these segment numbers in either in the parallels list here, or in the table view or in the numbers view, it will open that text up in a new tab under text view. So, okay, we've seen numbers view. Let's go to graph. And then we get the pretty pictures. So here we see the graph view of this, and you can also, the settings are a bit different here. So you still have the similarity score, the match length, and the number of co-occurrences, but the target collection is like, well, which collection do you really want to see? Right now it has all of them, but if I want to just see the matches of Anguttara Nikaya 3 with other early Buddhist texts, of maybe both early Buddhist texts here, then it will tell you that, and it will tell you how many there are. And if you go further down, there is a histogram match. It doesn't fit much on this screen, but if I hover over this, it will tell you which sutta is the most similar. So here it says Anguttara Nikaya 4. There is one that is most similar to Anguttara Nikaya 3. I guess this is not a very clear example because Anguttara Nikaya 3 and Anguttara Nikaya 4 are obviously very large texts. And the reason this is done is because they're just too small suttas to be looked at individually, so that we've grouped them all together. But if you go to, for instance, another text, if I go to Digha Nikaya 1, okay, and you'll see Digha Nikaya 1 is mostly similar to Digha Nikaya 2 and to in the Anguttara 10s. So that's interesting. It would be interesting to find out how much there is of a similarity there. Okay. Now, the one view that is, let me turn this off again. Oh, that we added very recently is the English. And it's not the same as, it might look the same when I'm in Digha Nikaya 1 still. So it might still look the same as the translations that you have on SuttaCentral, but it's not. This has been translated by a machine. And not by Bhante Sujato. It talks like Bhante Sujato in this part because Bhante Sujato's translations have been used as the base to train the machine. And if you want to see the original, you can SuttaCentral translation. You can click this on here as well. If you really want to, you can also turn the Pali into Devanagari. Which it is not doing. Oh, there it is. It is doing it. But I'll turn it back to Roman. I think most people find that a bit easier. Ooh. Okay. So this is the SuttaCentral translation back here. Oh, and in every view, by the way, you have this info button. If you don't know what you're looking at, you can always have a look at it and see how that works and what you're actually seeing. So yeah, so you can scroll down, and if there's something that you want to know what the Pali is, or you can, for instance, click on this one, and then it highlights that section. It also highlights the Pali of it, and it highlights the SuttaCentral translation in that. If you go to another section, it will do the same thing. It will scroll all three to the same section. So the interesting part of it is that not that we are like recreating the SuttaCentral translations, but that we can also translate texts that were not before translated. I'll go to one of the, this is the Visuddhimagga. So here you can start to read. Now, this is not perfect. So you should always remember this is a machine doing it. It's never 100% correct. And you always, but it gives some idea and some base. And this is still very much we're still very much in the beginning of doing this. So there's still a lot of improvement with all these texts that haven't been translated, but it's wonderful that it can be done, and we're starting to look into this more. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll go and show you. Let me see, which time is it? It's I have some time. Let's have a look at another translation. Let's, for instance, look at the Chinese. Oh, by the way, you also see that this link has changed. This now goes to the VRI and not to SuttaCentral. So let's go to, for instance, the Chinese. And there you have to say, have a few different ones. You don't have the English button. Let's look at the first one, which I think is the Dirgha Agama. Here it is. Okay. And so the segment numbers you have here on the side are the Taisho numbers, for those of you who know what that is. And it works again the same way as the other one. And here you also see, you can see this text in SuttaCentral. You can also see it in its original in C Beta, and you can go to the CBC website, which is a very interesting project. So I also advise you to have a look there and get more background information on all these texts. Same we have, for instance, for Tibetan, there are several sites that you can go to, etc. And also some of the Sanskrit texts, you can also go to SuttaCentral. So it depends a bit if it's there or not. Now, one thing I still want to show you about the database is the multilingual view. And that is still a bit experimental. It works only for Sanskrit Tibetan at the moment. But you can find so it has a limited number of texts. So what you see behind here is this little X, and it has different colors. If I go further down, you see it changes to blue. So that means these are the Tibetan texts, and these are Sanskrit texts that have a match in the other language. So well, let's just pick any one of them. And it will open automatically in multilingual view, and then you can see the matches between here on this side the Sanskrit, and on that side the Tibetan. And you can also open it up here in Gretel, which is the original Sanskrit, where the original Sanskrit comes from. And you can also go again to text view in these. And then you see exactly the same thing, but the difference here is also, or if I click on one of them, any one of them, it will also tell me here, oh, this is the Tibetan translation, and this is a normal match, a normal Sanskrit match. And if I go to the settings, here you see the two buttons, Sanskrit and Tibetan, so I can choose. If I don't want to see the Tibetan, or I just want to see the Tibetan, I can turn that on or off. And for the Tibetan, we can also change between Wiley and Unicode, so you can have this transliteration. Unfortunately, for Pali, we can only do that in the English mode, and it has something to do with the way matches are calculated in the different languages. So we haven't quite worked that one out yet, and it will be in a minute. Okay, now another part of this is the visual charts. I hope you're still with me. So these are Sankey graphs. You might not know what a Sankey graph is, but that will become clear very soon. So if I click on Pali, inquiry collection, let's just early suttas, and maybe whatever matches there are to the second part of the early suttas. And then it will tell you. And this color scheme, I can do gradient or can do inquiry collection. So then you can see on this side, on the other side, on the right, how many matches there are for each one of them. So basically, it gives you this chart that shows you exactly how many matches there are between a whole collection and another collection. And you can open one up, for instance. You can open the Majjhima Nikaya, and I get quite a lot of these, which I don't quite get on one page. I have a full screen mode here too, but it doesn't actually recalculate that. So, and then I can go to the next page as well. Okay. All right. I think that's the very brief introduction to BuddhaNexus. And I'll stop sharing right now. And I see there's somebody has said something here. Okay, Wonderful. So if there's anybody who has a question, then please let me know. Or it might be a bit daunting with all these different languages that are not English. Because it's quite specialist, so it's not like the SuttaCentral, which is more focused on the translations and on studying this text in that way. So this studies the text in another way. So a parallel study is mainly used to to also show us how these texts have evolved over time, and how and also for me, I find it incredibly helpful to see, it's like, okay, this text here is a little paragraph, what does that really mean? And then you can look it up in other texts or in different contexts, or in the commentarial text, and see, like, what did people that wrote the commentaries make of these texts, and what did it mean to them, and all these things. So I find it incredibly helpful to be able to look that up. And you can also see a little bit more, like, well, where are these matches? Are these most of the matches in later texts? Then most likely the sutta you're looking at is also a bit later. So you can get some feel for how these texts have evolved over time, what the Buddha really said, what other people said about it later on, etc. So, okay. Does anybody have a question or something that wasn't clear that I can show again, or maybe say something more about? So Adam is saying, what a marvelous introduction and project. The machine translated English works in relation to the Pali commentaries. Could Gandhari be added at a later stage? I think we don't have enough Gandhari translations to be able to do this. I'll tell you a bit more about this. I just uploaded a new commentarial version of the English yesterday, and we've been trying out different things. The first version we had only the SuttaCentral translations, which are only from the early Buddhist texts. And so the early Buddhist, the Nikayas and the Vinaya. And so that's very limited in a way. First of all, there were only like 90,000. That's not very much. 90,000 segments and these machine learning things, they will need to basically have at least 100,000 to be anywhere effective. But when you look at the commentaries, you're looking at hundreds to thousands years later, or well, not thousands, but many hundreds years later. And so the text has evolved over time. It's the text that is used in the early Buddhist texts, or the Pali that's used in the early Buddhist text, is a much later form of the language. So you can see our own languages. If you see something from 100 years ago and you go like, gosh, did people speak like that then? So that's quite a different way of using the language. And if it over 1,000 years, of course, the change is enormous. So the first model we had didn't do very well with the commentaries. Now, recently I had added some commentarial texts as a training data. So that's a bit of an older way of using the language. And mostly from Ancient Buddhist Texts website from Venerable Anandajoti. And there we could add another 45,000 matches, segment matches. So then we had quite a lot more to go on. So now the yeah, the commentarial texts are still not that great, but they're doable. But there is another project on the way with the University of Oxford, SuttaCentral, and the University of Oxford to, and that's so that might be using these translations as a base. So still quite a lot that needs to be done in that way. So that's a very interesting project, and as long as when that project goes along, then yeah, the more they translate, the more we can put into the system, and the better it will become for all the other texts as well. Because translating all the commentaries, I think it's a huge job. It's a lot there. So, and another project we're starting to work on is doing the same for the Chinese. So yeah, that's all in the future. And another thing that we also want to do is match Pali with Sanskrit, first of all, because that's not too difficult, shouldn't be too difficult, because Pali and Sanskrit are obviously fairly similar. I don't think we have Kandari in there. We have, how do you call it? Prakrit we have in there as well. And then, yeah, the next step is matching it up also with the Tibetan and with the Chinese. And of course, the Chinese is the most complicated to match things up. So we have to have a lot of sentence-to-sentence matches before we can actually do that. So that's a lot of work for the next years. But yeah, our machine learning models will become bigger, better over time as well. And it's like 5 years ago, you wouldn't think this would be possible. And now, yeah, it is. So, yeah.
Yeah, such an amazing, marvelous effort by all the team. That's an amazing contribution for the world. And in terms of things like variant readings, variants of words, variants of spellings in the Pali, is it able to capture some of those variations?
It is, yes, absolutely. Yeah, because it doesn't actually look at, is the text exactly the same? It looks at, it's like, well, how much is similar of this? And if it's similar enough, of course, it depends a bit on the settings we put into the machine, first of all, of like if it's similar enough, it will go like, okay, yeah, this is a match, or this is not a match. And then with the similarity score, it will tell you how similar it actually is. Yeah. Right. Is there anybody else who has a question or comment? Right. I'm thinking if there's something else I can show you at the moment, but not right now. I think we'll call it today then if there's no more questions or comments. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much all for joining. It's lovely to see you, and it's. I know this is not an easy subject. It's not, but thank you for hanging in there if you found it complicated. All right. Hope to see you again. I'll be back tomorrow morning as usual with the chanting and morning meditation, and also the evening guided meditation. And then in this series, next month, hopefully, we have the German SuttaCentral, because the SuttaCentral is busy internationalizing the website. That means that you can see the website in your own language. But I don't know how many languages it will start with, at least with German, and then Samita will give a presentation on that. So that will be next month. hopefully, and but right now it's not quite sure when that will be ready yet, and we might have to postpone it another month if that doesn't transpire. But we'll keep you informed anyway via the website and via the Facebook and via our newsletter. So, okay. Have a wonderful evening and hope to see you again. I'll just pay respects to Buddha Dhamma Sangha. I don't know how much you'll see of that, but Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddha Bhagavanta Mavivaremi Sujato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamma Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaga Sangho Sangham Namami